Hi, I'm Allie.
I'm Nick.
And this is But Have You Tried from the David A. Howe Public Library.
Summer reading program's exhausting, Allie. I don't know if you're aware of this.
I am, yeah.
All
I
right.
have. But we're almost done.
I know.
Well, today we are discussing leverage.
Leverage.
And not the, the force.
concept
The concept
of
where
leverage.
you, lever things.
Yeah.
But the show specifically.
Yeah. Years back on the All the Book show, we did a crossover with a podcast called Three Nice Things, where on that show we were going to watch Battlefield Earth, which is like a legendarily bad movie.
Okay.
And so I decided I was going to read the book.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And I weirdly enjoyed the book, and there's a whole episode on this in the All the Book show archives.
I was expecting you to say that it was torture and you should never have assigned yourself
it was like
extra
weirdly, it's such a bizarre, just listen to the episode because it's so bizarre to explain. But in that, the characters keep coming back to this concept of leverage. Like that's the thing that's moving everything around. They try to get leverage on each other.
That's so funny.
And so in that book, they say leverage like a million times.
Enough that it loses all meaning.
Yes, and in the movie they do the same thing. So that every time I hear that, I think Battlefield Earth. But yes, we're not talking about Battlefield Earth. We're talking about the Timothy Hutton show.
Correct.
From TNT back in the day. And I realized that you're not the first person who tried to get me to watch Leverage. Yeah, one of my good friends from college, Jesse, he gave me all the DVDs and was like, I think you'll like it. Here. And he gave me the DVDs and they sat in my house for a couple of years and then I never even put one in the DVD player and I gave it back to him. So, but this time I did do it.
This time it finally happened.
Yeah.
By
it
the
was
power
an
of
assignment.
podcasts.
I couldn't let you down. Jesse, whatever, but you, I could never. I do have some facts. Would you like to hear them?
I would like to hear some facts,
All right.
yes.
Well, the show Leverage ran on TNT from December 2008 to December 2012 for a total of 77 episodes. Were you watching this as it happened?
No, I was not.
When did you start watching it?
I think my senior year of high school.
Okay.
Around then, anyway.
Okay. And how did that happen?
So my family used to watch a lot of sort of like detective-y or like police procedural spy, like that kind of shows back in the day. And I forget what we'd been watching, but we were all getting kind of burned out on it. And my sister, I guess, had watched a couple episodes of Leverage by herself.
Okay.
The nerve.
Okay.
And she was like, I think this is really fun and you guys would like it. Let's just watch the first episode and see what you think. And I don't think we kept watching it as a whole family, but I did end up watching a number of episodes with her. Okay. And then later, my entire family watched most of it.
Okay. So have you seen every episode?
I have not seen every episode.
Oh.
Because partly because the episodes are often fairly self-contained. Yeah. You can kind of just like pick one and watch it.
Right.
So I watched some of it with my family before I went to college, and then I went to college, and some of my friends in college also really liked it, ironically. Okay. And so we would just watch random episodes because my one friend had like access to certain ones, so we would just kind of pick one and watch it. And then after college, I think, or maybe like summer or something, my family started watching through it, but then they would watch episodes while I wasn't there. Mm-hmm. So there's like random ones. Like I've seen most of it, but there's random ones throughout that I haven't seen.
Sounds like the show's a major part of your life. Multiple areas of development.
It really is. It's
Leverage.
like a through line.
Well, if you're not familiar with it, here is the IMDb synopsis. Nathan Ford is played by Timothy Hutton, and his 5-member team of thieves and hackers come together like modern-day Robin Hoods in an attempt to steal from the rich and powerful individuals who take advantage of others. Do they then give to the poor? That's the question
basically.
That's left. Okay.
But that is kind of unspecified.
Yeah, I know. It kind of leaves
it
to just steal, starring Timothy Hutton, Gina Bellman, Aldous Hodge, and Christian Kane. And others. It was created by John Rogers and Chris Downey. 13 episodes of the series were directed by Jonathan Frakes, as I said last time. I knew he'd done some, but he did 13 of those, and he did one of the sequel series. One of the episodes was directed by Frank Oz, famous Muppeteer Frank Oz, who also, directed movies and was Yoda. And
that's kind of a fun fact.
Random. There were 3 novels based on the series that were released.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Sequel series Leverage Redemption began airing on Freevee in 2021. The hitter, the hacker, the grifter, and the thief are back, this time with help from a new tech genius and corporate fixer to take on a new kind of villain. When someone needs help, they provide leverage. Correct, yes. 2 seasons of the sequel series have aired at time of recording, with more to come. Several cast members return, plus the addition of Noah Wiley as the new lead. I know Noah Wiley from ER. You probably the librarians?
Yep.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Although when I started watching it, I didn't I was like, where do I recognize this guy from? And then I saw the credits where they were flashing, and I was like, oh my gosh,
there he is.
It's the librarian.
Yeah. Yeah, the Librarians reminds me that Bob Newhart just died. I love Bob Newhart. Yeah. I mean, he's very, very old. But,
I mean, yeah, it does kind of make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's it. Those are the basic facts. Here's what I did. I watched the first disc that we have here, so that's the first 3 episodes.
Okay.
I sampled one of the books. We don't have them in the system, but you can read a sample on Livy. So I sampled the first of the book and dug into it a little bit. I kind of wanted to watch an episode of Redemption because I really like Noah Wyle and was curious what a more modern version of the show was going to be like. Did you watch any
I did watch a couple of those because I hadn't before we were getting ready to do this episode, so I figured it was time.
Yeah. And?
I really liked it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because I think part of the reason I hadn't watched it is like just the skepticism of like, is a reboot gonna work? And like, not all the characters return, or like some of them are there for a couple episodes and then they kind of phase out.
Yeah.
And I was not sure about that premise. And also I was like, maybe I should actually watch every episode of Leverage, which I haven't done. Mm-hmm. Someday I'll do that.
Okay.
I'll track down all the ones I haven't seen. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. The first episode has that really fun like reunion feel where it's like they're calling back to a lot of like old character dynamics and like old episodes and stuff. Mm-hmm. And there's kind of a new Noah Wile's character is like they like find him trying to do a crime and they are like, we're going to take you under our wing and and help you out here.
That's cute.
Yeah. Yeah. But so he's like confused, like they're referencing all these stuff, and he's just like, "What is happening? What are these people?"
So that's kind of clever to bring in him and have him be sort of like a lens for new viewers, maybe.
I think that's really fun. And then the character Hardison, who's like the hacker, he's there for like 2 or so episodes, and then he dips out. I think he might have like kind of cameos later on.
Is that Aldous Hodge?
Probably.
Because I saw that he is in 8 episodes of Redemption.
Okay.
So
must be.
Of what has come out so far.
That tracks.
Yep. It doesn't look like Timothy Hutton is back at all.
He is not back.
Okay.
Which they find a way to like make that a relevant plot theme and not just like, we have no explanation, but he's not there.
Timothy Hutton was just here. You missed him.
Right? Yeah.
He ducked out.
But they replace like Hardison's role on the team with his younger sister.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of fun. So they like have a couple episodes of like the main group with Noah Wyle, and then they kind of do a little switcheroo there.
Okay.
Which I thought was a good way to handle that.
Is it enough to make you want to watch more?
I think I probably will.
Does it feel like, essentially this is just a new season of the same show, or does it have a more modern aesthetic? How does it stack up?
It feels pretty similar. I'd say the biggest difference is just character changes. Okay. Like we've got some new crew members. We're missing some old crew members. But the way the episodes feel, kind of the plotting and the dynamic feels very similar. Okay. But I think the shooting feels a little more modern. Just like the camera angles and stuff, which is good. Yeah. I'd say probably.
Yeah. I think this falls into that genre of TV that has sort of, it's come and gone over the years. A classic example would be like The Fugitive from forever ago, where the long game in The Fugitive is that he's trying to, clear his name. Mm-hmm. But each episode, he kind of wanders into a town, fixes a problem, and moves on. And you have a lot of things like that, like Dragnet, Adam 12, The Incredible Hulk, Quantum Leap. Like, there are things like that where it's like you have your main crew. Every episode, you get kind of a new cast of supporting characters. You do the thing,
right,
and then you move on. And there's through lines throughout, but it's primarily about that like episodic. It's a little mini movie, basically. That's kind of how I felt about the 3 that I watched. Does that seem accurate?
I think so. And there's more of the like ongoing bigger picture narrative as it goes along.
Yeah.
Like I think the first season is probably the one that has the least like meta arc, and then it kind of continues. Because like all the characters, I feel like at the beginning, like some information about them all, but they're all fairly mysterious.
Okay.
In terms of like, where did these people who used to do crime but are now being Robin Hood people, where did they come from? How did they
I sort of got the
here?
impression that like there's some prickliness in the early episodes and they don't fully trust each other and they're kind of like coming together. And I could see that sort of morphing into a more like tight, family sort of vibe. Like I could see that being a major thing that happens. But this time, 2008, in that era was when I feel like that brand of TV was kind of having a resurgence because you had USA that was doing shows like Psych and Burn Notice and Royal Pains and Fairly Legal. There was all of these shows that was the same kind of thing. It's like, here's your crew. They're going to do a thing. They're going to move on. And Leverage to me felt like a little bit more of a serious version of that, because I think, Burn Notice and Psych in particular were more goofy, and that was sort of USA's brand, whereas TNT was like The Closer and these like serious kind of shows. So Leverage, from what I saw of it, was kind of straddling that line of being that episodic, like, look at this fun crew, while also trying to kind of tell a more serious style of story.
Yeah.
That was my takeaway from it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And I think it strikes a really interesting balance also because, like, the dynamic with the members of the crew can often be on the goofy side. Like, they're joking around, they're teasing each other, they're like, you know, it kind of starts with this initial, like, you know, Nate Ford is the mastermind, and then you've got Sophie as the grifter, and Parker as the thief, Hardison as the hacker, and Elliot's the hitter, you know. And as it goes on, there's times where they, like, have to do each other's jobs, and so they'll be, like, trying to... It is fun. Yeah, it's always a fun twist when they do that. So they'll be, like, trying to tell each other how to do it, and then arguing about it and stuff in a way that I find really fun. But at the same time, there's also this, like... The whole premise is, like, you know, there's really scummy rich people out there who are, like, hurting people who don't have anyone to take care of them.
Yeah.
And so it's very satisfying in that you get to see so many people who are in bad situations, I guess, be rescued effectively. But there is still that, like, just the kind of conceptual ongoing note of, like, there's these bad, mean people who are not caring about their employees or whatever it is.
Yeah. I think it's interesting when you look at, like, you know, TV history in the long run, because for a while there, and this you know, it's always cyclical, but there was a moment there where it was like things are going to be like super serialized, you know. It's like you're watching one long narrative and this is just a little slice of it, you know, which can be a really compelling way to tell a story, but it also is reliant on your audience watching every episode,
right?
You know. So around this time, probably a little prior to this, definitely prior to this, you had like the Battlestar Galactica reboot, which, have you ever seen any of that?
I don't think so.
You might get into that. The first season of that is very serialized. Same is true with Veronica Mars. You start in a really serialized way, and then the networks or whoever are like, this isn't working. We need people to be able to just pop in and see whatever, you know, because there's a real intimidation about, like, well, if I don't start it from the beginning, I can't watch it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so right before this show, there was a pivot away from that serialized storyline where you were taking serialized shows and being like, from now on, you got to be episodic, you know. And I think this show comes along and right at the time where they're like, no serialization, you know, everything has to be its own thing, and it kind of slides into that mode really well. I watched the three and I enjoyed them and I get it, but I don't think that it would be one that I would like now add to my list of, you know, I wasn't like, oh, I have to watch the next episode. And I don't know if that's because I do lean a little bit heavier towards like wanting more of a serialized rather than like having a new buy-in with a new set of characters every time. I kind of like the, you know, these are the people that we're following in their stories, take the lead. But I don't know, because I also in college, like my whole dorm floor was like, got super into the CSI shows, you know, like CSI in Miami in particular. You know, we watch those all the time, and those do have plot lines going through, but largely they are mystery of the week kind of shows,
right?
You know, so. Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. I was like, yeah, I get it. Fine, I get why this would be enjoyable. But yeah, I don't think I would add more to it. And I think that's why I never really, like, I remember this being on, and I like Timothy Hutton, you know, and in hindsight, like looking at the cast now, there's a lot of people in it that I like and have seen since then. But at the time, I sort of passed on it just because it didn't appeal to me in that way. It just sort of looked like, I don't know, like it was kind of like riding the coattails of an Ocean's 11 or something like that, where that was kind of becoming cool again. And I don't think I ever watched even a second of it. So I'm glad I finally have. Like, I'm glad I finally see that because
New
it
experiences.
was. Yeah, because it really was. Like, I don't know if it was ever like a huge cultural juggernaut of a show, but I think it was the kind of show that had like a super dedicated fan base. And because of its episodic nature, has probably aged a little better than some of the others that are more. Because, like you said, I mean, you just pop into it and watch it, like whenever it hits you. So,
which I feel like makes it such a great comfort show because it's like anytime you can pick an episode, you can just scroll through and be like, all right, here we go.
I'm gonna watch this one today. Yep.
And you might be like, oh wait, there's that weird bit at the end where I forgot that ongoing villain or whatever. But for the most part, you can figure out what's going on.
I could see myself checking into Redemption just because I really like Noah Wyle and like the ads and stuff I've seen for it. You know, it does feel There are definitely dated elements, I think, of that first season that I was watching. It feels
even
like an
just
old
like
TV
the tech
show.
and like the clothing feels very dated to me.
Yeah, and just the cinematography and the product, like the words on the screen and stuff, just have a very like old school kind of vibe.
Yeah, but the like coloring somehow, something about that feels very.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a sort of a drabness to it, which again was in stark contrast, literally, to everything that was going on at USA with Burn Notice and Psych. All those shows kind of had their own color palette. Burn Notice was always blue, Psych was always kind of yellow in their aesthetic, and that made for a really like colorful experience. And again, I think this was going a little bit more for like
beige.
But like a this is grounded, like this is serious kind of vibe.
I think you might like Redemption. I feel like because I think Leverage. It never gets like super serialized, but it does become much more so over the as the seasons go along.
That almost has to happen. Like the more you live with the characters,
right? Exactly. One, it's like you explore more about their relationships with each other and their backstories, and they have to deal with their inner demons and that kind of stuff. But I feel like Redemption so far seems like it's starting with more serialization than the original show did. So it still doesn't seem like it's a ton so far, but it might be a better fit for you if you don't want to jump into a random later season.
I could see that. Did you ever watch the show Without a Trace? Kind of a contemporary.
I don't think so.
It was about, it was like I think maybe it was FBI, I don't know. It was a missing persons unit, and every time they would have a new case.
Okay.
That was one my college buddies and I were also super into, and we watched a bunch of those. And that was another one where it was episodic, and then in the later seasons, their personal lives kind of took center stage. And I remember watching one, and it was mostly about the main character, Jack, sort of dealing with the aftermath of his divorce. And we watched the whole episode and realized, well, there was no case. They didn't even have a missing person, because it had kind of transitioned into expanding to be a little bit more, which I think is cool. Yeah. When a show can grow. And everything I've read about this says that like that happens. So yeah.
What was the novel like? I'm curious about that. I didn't know anything about those.
There's 3. 2 of them are written by authors that I've read a lot of stuff from. Keith R.A. Candido and Greg Cox. Both have written a lot of Star Trek stuff.
Okay.
The first one was the one that I read, and it was about somebody targeting comic book artists and arranging to like buy their archives and then ripping them off, essentially.
Okay.
And so they approach the team about this, and the team is kind of like, these are kind of low stakes. Like, I don't know if we want to weigh into something like that. And so the team was kind of warming up to taking on. And then the sample ran out, so I don't know what happened.
Tragic.
But it felt right. I mean, it felt like the show. And I probably, if we had it here, I was enjoying it. Like, I think I would have keep reading it. And in some ways, I feel like that I might have gotten into that, like the heisty angle in a book maybe more than I would of the TV show anyway. So I liked it. I mean, if you're a fan of the series, I feel like it was worth reading. A lot of those tie-in fictions can be a little varied. The quality can be iffy, and there's not usually a through line of the same authors writing all of them. So who knows what they're all like. But yeah, I felt like it adapted well to the page.
Yeah, I'd be kind of curious to check that out.
I thought maybe there'd be graphic novels, because it seems like that would also work well in a graphic novel form. But I couldn't find anything like that. But yeah, there are 3 books, just a nice tight little trilogy. And it looked like the books kind of came out after the series.
Okay.
So I didn't get the impression that they were like tying things up or anything. It seems like the books just went into print and the series happened to be canceled. It's probably why there's only 3 of them. Because all of those series, Psych, Burn Notice, like they all got novel continuations. Monk, Diagnosis Murder, Murder, She Wrote, of course. So yeah, I like a good tie-in fiction. Do you think you'd ever read the book? If one just wandered in from the book sale, would you be like, I'm going to sit down and read this?
I might take a peek at it at least and see.
All right. That's not a commitment.
Well, it's always the kind of thing where it's like if I start, like I'm curious to start reading it, and then if I start reading it and the quality isn't great, then it's like it's over.
You read it until the next Louise Penny comes out, and then you just drop everything. Okay.
I think there's one coming out this fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm excited.
Where are you on your Terry Pratchett journey?
I've taken a brief pause from Terry Pratchett.
Okay.
Mostly because I'm reading Mistborn.
Oh, that's right. Mistborn.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're very different, but they both take the fantasy slot in my reading. So I'll go back. I'm working through the City Watch series.
Okay.
Is where we left off in Terry Pratchett. But I have to read some more Mistborn first, and then I'll keep going.
Yeah. And Mistborn is infinite, right? There's just every page you read,
almost
there's another page
that
added.
way, yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay, well, listen, I know you like Leverage, but have you tried Star Trek The Cage?
No.
Do you know what Star Trek The Cage is?
I don't think so.
Okay. So, back in the 60s, the network commissioned a new show called Star Trek. And so Gene Roddenberry writes this pilot, and they shoot it with Captain Pike as the captain. And the network sees the finished thing, and they're like, nah, we don't like it. It's too cerebral. It's too dark. Like, we need something that's lighter and more fun. And they're like, also, we hate that Spock character. He looks like the devil. And so they commissioned a second pilot, which is very rare. And the second pilot introduces Captain Kirk and like the Star Trek that you know, and Leonard Nimoy, of course, back as Spock. So the Cage becomes.
So they didn't succeed in getting rid of Spock. That was the one thing that they were
Spock
like.
Spock is the only character.
We don't care what you think about
Spock. Is the only character
him.
that carries over.
It's funny.
Yeah, it is funny. So the Cage sort of became this little curio where it's this original pilot, and it's still. I mean, the sets are pretty much the same. It's definitely the world. And then later in the run of the original series, they took that pilot and used pieces of it to tell like a flashback story about Pike and Spock. And so it's sort of integrated into the original series. But the full uncut original is one of my favorite Star Trek things. And probably the network was right. Like, had they gone forward with the tone of the Cage, you know, it probably would have gone a season and have been forgotten. You know what I mean? So it was probably the right call, but I think watching The Cage now is so interesting because it's like this proto Star Trek, and I think it's really cool, and I actually think that you'll really like it. So,
well, I'm curious to try it for
this
sure.
is my bold prediction that you will like The Cage. So I know that it's streaming on Paramount Plus. I know that it is in the DVDs of the series, and I also have a little Blu-ray called like Star Trek Beginnings that has a bunch of pilots on it. So I will send it your way.
Sounds good.
What do you think?
I think I can succeed at this mission.
You think you can do it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, we'll be back in 2 weeks to talk about everything we're reading, watching. You can hear more about my Mistborn journey. Yeah. And then in a month, we'll be back to talk about Star Trek The Cage.
That's right. And that coincides pretty closely with Star Trek Day.
Oh.
So
did you time that on purpose?
The Cage was bouncing around in my head, and then I looked at the calendar, and I was like, oh, perfect time.
And you're wearing your Star Trek Adventure Begins shirt right now.
At your library.
Did you plan that, or was that just coincidence?
No, it's just coincidence.
There's
I'm wearing
just so
this
much
because,
Star Trek in your life.
Today, at our time of recording, we're doing our first Books and Brews book club over at the Wellsville Brewing Company, where we're going to talk about the Clive Cussler, Robin Purcell book, The Gray Ghost. If you follow the How's Things feed, my friend Steve Rudd, who is an expert on all things Clive Cussler, read it with me, and we did a little mini episode of How's Things just talking about The Gray Ghost. Spoiler alert, it's not a good book. We didn't like it.
Oh, no.
But we had a good time talking about it. So
that's all that matters.
I'm actually very curious to see how people will respond to it, because we chose it because I thought, it's about this famous car that goes missing, and it's like half historical fiction, half set in the present. And I thought maybe it would appeal to people, who would want to do that kind of book club. But I really didn't like it. So I've got my fingers crossed that either people will like it or we'll all be on the same page and have a good discussion. So
you'll have to update us
I will.
in the bookshelf
I will.
episode.
That's right. Okay, I'll do that. I'll see you then.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.